It stems back to my childhood. I used to have a terrible fear of the dark and never wanted to go to sleep. From there, I developed insomnia. With time, the fear disappeared, but the insomnia stayed. It became a problem without a solution up until my early teens. That's when I was introduced to lucid dreaming. My older sister was obsessed with it. She also claimed to be able to dream share, which meant that at night, her and her best friend could fall asleep in their own beds, in their own rooms, separate themselves from their bodies, and meet up in a completely open dream space, where creativity was endless. I always thought they were full of it, but the lucid dreaming part fascinated me. So I started teaching myself how to do it. The problem was, it rests on the ability to have consistent sleep hygiene and stable REM, neither of which I had. Since my sleep patterns were chaotic, I would lay in bed for hours with my eyes closed, focused on my breathing. I'd visualize myself sitting up in bed, then standing, then sliding on pants and a hoodie, walking to the door, exiting into the hall. I focused on every detail, recreating my room and hallway, then the staircase down, then the first floor, then the entire house. Soon I started adding in my family, peppering them through our home. Small interactions with mom and dad and my sister Gemma were sprinkled throughout. Then I realized I wasn't visualizing anymore. I was finally asleep, and I was lucid dreaming. While under, I started going outside my house, adding more details around me and the world. My friends and neighbors were built into it. The world expanded, growing on its own and creating separate systems of events. I had interactions with people I'd created and people who I'd never seen before. Full conversations about the weather and sports and life. I filled their words in at first, but they took on lives of their own, fueled by my projections and manifestations of their individual consciousness. Then, something strange happened. I started to see the people from my dreams, the ones I hadn't created or seen before, out in the real world when I was awake. They were real people, with real lives, and they acted the same as they did in my dream world. I was having similar conversations with the same people in both real life and in my dreams. The words spoken weren't exactly the same. Sometimes the content veered off, but whoever I would be speaking to would mirror whatever my projections of their dream self was, to varying degrees. The first few times it happened, I dismissed it as a coincidence, then as an extraordinary coincidence. I didn't want to admit that I was losing control of the lucidity of my dreams. The oddities continued. I saw a car accident in one of the dreams. I hadn't created it. It just happened. My sister was killed in the crash. It was horrible and felt all too real. I woke up and cried and begged for her to never ride in a car again. A week later, my cousin was in a car accident that killed the driver. 1 week I had a dream about my mom going blind. 2 weeks later, doctors found cancer in my grandmother's lungs. Another week I had a dream about our cat dying. A few days passed and our neighbor's dog died, and it kept happening like that. I couldn't tell if I was causing these warped events or simply witnessing them early, as they rippled outwards in chaotic ways. Because they weren't the same, I couldn't predict who or where they would happen next. I'd only have a vague direction, a hazy hint. The line between my conscious and subconscious was blurring. I made the decision to stop lucid dreaming. I decided to go in one last time and create as much joy and love as possible. To project all the good I had hoped to see in the world, finally coming to fruition. But when the dream started and I sat up in bed, I felt a strange tingling across my body. An electrical frequency needled against my skin like a static shock blanket. All my hair stood up on the ends of ice-cold goosebumps. I felt the frequency humming in the air around me. I called out to my mom and dad, but no one answered. I left my room and walked downstairs. I could see outside to the street through the front windows. My family was on our lawn, looking up in uncertainty and fear at the sky. Mom was clutching Dad. Gemma looked terrified. I went outside to join them and saw all the neighbors were out front of their homes, looking up as well. I rushed up to my mom, but she didn't see me. Neither did my dad or Gemma. I tried to grab my mom's arms, but I had no hands or arms. I looked down and realized I didn't even have a body. I was just an entity, a transparent spirit, floating through the dream world. I tried to wake myself up, but I was stuck there. And the scariest thing was, I wasn't even sure I was dreaming anymore. Despite the obvious bizarreness, I'd lost the ability to differentiate. Everything felt real. I had never fully lost control of a dream before, but in this one, I was a witness, strapped into the front row like Alex DeLarge. I followed my family's gaze up into the sky. What looked like an upside-down volcanic eruption with electrical discharges sparking through the thickening smoke was taking over the sky directly above us. A different kind of thunder began erupting from the clouds. It was deep and carried the sound of a living organism as it grew closer and more violent. Yellowish raindrops began hitting the pavement around us. Everywhere they landed, you could hear sizzling. A drop landed on my dad and burned the top of his head. What was falling was a highly corrosive acidic rain. All the neighbors ran into their homes, and I followed my family into ours as they were pelted by the burning droplets. Inside, I watched my mom and Gemma try to help my dad, but the burn on his head kept melting away flesh and was eating into his skull. No matter how hard they tried, my mom and Gemma couldn't clean it or wipe it off. The burn kept eating into and through his brain. My dad shook and spasmed and went absolutely still. He was gone. Outside, the rain began to pour down. Smoke rose up from the lawns and streets as the acid burned through everything. Cars parked on the streets were melting away. I knew it wouldn't be long until the roof over our heads would cave in. Then, heavy thuds began to hit the grounds outside. It was impossible to see anything out the window, so I floated through the wall and out into the storm. I reached the street and began to see dark silhouettes twitching and stretching out through the smoke. I got closer, and the silhouettes and shadows took full shape. They were horrible creatures, the size of cars. They had tentacles sprouting from their mouths, which gave the impression of a much larger dimension. Ugly, shrill sounds were emitting from the monstrosities. The acid rain didn't affect the creatures. They were slicked with it. It rolled off them like normal water. The creatures were falling from the clouds. When they landed, their bones broke as they hit the ground, spiking out of their skin. I watched as the skin quickly healed around the sharp edges of the bones, using some advanced regenerative ability. If the fall had hurt any of the internal organs, it didn't show. Because seconds after their skin healed, the creatures were up and at a full sprint in different directions, towards different houses. They had such immediate intent. It was obvious they had a robust sensory receptor that locked on to any nearby humans and fueled a powerful prey drive. I saw one of them run towards my house and I quickly followed it. The beast exploded through the front windows, trashing the empty living room. The creature tore into the floor and pulled it apart. I found my parents and Gemma hiding in the basement. I couldn't stop it. I couldn't do anything but watch. The hideous creature spread its tentacles, revealing rows of jagged, scalpel-sharp teeth, and devoured my family. Then the monster ran off to consume more people. I didn't know what to do. For an hour I floated through the growing wasteland. I watched houses, buildings, and forests burn down to nothing from the acid rain, as the creatures ripped through basements, seeking out any survivors. There was no stopping them. In the distance, I heard a loud rumble, like an impossibly large explosion. Then another, and another. A fourth one brought my attention to the right, where I saw a row of military planes miles away, flying in the opposite direction of an intensely growing mushroom cloud. Massive, fiery shockwaves were obliterating everything they touched, including their creatures. I realized the government was nuking the entire area. From every direction, I was surrounded by the explosions rushing in. As they reached me, I thought I was going to die. I thought that was it. Despite the insanity of what was happening, I thought it was all real. Then the explosive inferno hit me, and I woke up in bed. I knew I was awake, and actually in my real bed, because I'd pissed myself and sweat through the sheets. I had never been so happy to wake up. I told myself I'd never sleep again, and if I did, I'd never dream again. But the thing is, since I woke up, I've been getting these strange feelings, like electrical currents riding up and down my skin, like a static shock blanket, causing all my hair to stand up on the ends of ice-cold goosebumps.